excited about this message, and it's all about the first Christmas, okay? So real quick, Mark asked you last week, how many of you have a birthday in December? Awesome, just 3 of us. Okay, hey, happy birthday to us. Happy birthday to us and Jesus, okay? But I want to talk about, obviously, Jesus' birthday, and that first birthday, we call it Christmas. But I want to talk really about what makes a birthday a good birthday, okay? And I think that part of it is, obviously, the people. Okay, the people, that makes it great. If you're like celebrating your birthday by yourself, that can be tough, that can be difficult, but the people really make it happen. But it's because the people are the ones who bring the gifts, okay? It's the gifts that make the birthday, all right? It's the gifts that make it worth celebrating. It's a good time. We love the gifts. But my favorite gift, y'all, is the gift that you didn't even ask for, and you get it. And it changes your world like it just came out of nowhere. I was going to show a clip of a couple Christmases ago. Me and Marissa and my brother got one of these gifts from my parents. And what you have to know is that the Christmas before that, we got some cool gifts. We got some clothes, but we also got some outlets. You heard me correct. Not like shopping out. I mean like you plug in for power and electricity. We got outlets. Because when you get older and into adulthood, you need some random things. And my parents happen to know that, hey, we're going, and we ended up having to use them. I was like, oh my goodness, hey, where are those outlets that Mom and Dad gave us? But the year after that, we all 3 had the same gift because it was shaped similarly, wrapped similarly. It's like, okay, these are all the same thing. And we opened it up. I was the first one to open it up, and all I could do was laugh. It seemed rude, but I was laughing because my mind couldn't comprehend how we went from outlets to an Apple Watch, and there's 3 of us, so all 3 of us have Apple Watches right now. It's like we're on an episode, like you get a watch, you get a watch. It's like, what are Oprah Winfrey, are you my mom now? Like we all got Apple Watches. So I just couldn't fathom it. I just kept laughing. I didn't ask for it. So I know that if you're at your house tonight and all week and until December 25th, you have the tree up and you keep walking around that tree saying, okay, yeah, how we doing, Mom? Dinner ready? Okay, yeah, okay. Yeah. Like, okay, I remember that feels like what I asked for. You walk by the bag, that looks like what I asked for. Okay, we're good. But I don't know what this is. Like, that's different. I didn't ask for this. So for this week 2 message in our series, A Happy Birthday, I want us to talk about a happy birthday that you didn't ask for. Because you know some things about Jesus' birthday, right? You know that Mary was pregnant before she got married, right, with Joseph, and there were some complications, right? They had to go on the Maury show, and he looked up, opened the card, looked at Joseph, and said, you are not the father, right? And it became a thing, and Joseph was like, okay, I'm going to divorce you. And actually, under Jewish law, I don't know if you knew this part about the Christmas story, Joseph could have, said, hey, we're going to divorce, we're not getting married. But he also had the right to grab Mary and whoever it was that she had this affair with and bring them to the public and have them executed. He could have done that under the Jewish law. He could have done it. If he could prove who it was. So, he's walking around like, who was it? Look at her side. Who'd you done it? You like, right? But he had a compassionate heart and said, I don't want to embarrass you like that. So maybe I'll just divorce you quietly and we'll just go our separate ways until we had a dream. I don't know how you feel about your dreams, but imagine this, that he had a dream and the angel said, nope, you're not the father. No one else is the father. It's God. The son she's going to have is the Son of God, and you are to name him Jesus, which means God saves. That's a really cool name, right? So that's the picture. So that's going on. But go with me now into your home where you probably have a nativity scene set up. Am I right? You have a painting somewhere. There's like a little glass baby Jesus sitting in like a little thing of hay. Maybe it's on your nightstand or somewhere in the family room of your house. But if you look there, you see baby Jesus, you see Mary and Joseph, you see some animals, and your nativity scene looks like a barn. This series, I want to help clarify some details that may be misconstrued. Jesus wasn't born in a barn, y'all. It wasn't a barn. It was similar, but it's actually a cave. It was like the opening of a cave where they would often keep animals, so it's closed. But barn, cave, okay, right? So there's a little difference there. And so if you're looking at your nativity scene at your house, in your living room, you see baby Jesus, Mary, Joseph, some animals, okay, that makes sense. And then you see some shepherd boys that came from a field, right? So okay, that kind of makes sense. But then tell me, do you have in your nativity scene, are there three guys that they called what did they call them? The wise men. Yeah, do you have three wise men in your nativity scene? Because I just have to tell you that they weren't there on the first Christmas. I hate to do it to you, right? You should still make your Christmas list, guys, okay? I'm not trying to do this. But they weren't there the night Jesus was born. They showed up about 2 years later. And we're going to talk about them next week. So if you have questions about that, bring them next week, and we're going to talk all about it. But they showed up 2 years later with some gifts. They had gold, frankincense, and myrrh, and those all represent something we're going to talk about next week, so don't miss it. But they were not there the night he was born. So let's kind of run through this real quick. I want to do a roll call of every character in the Christmas story that we've talked to so far. Mary was there, right? Was Mary there? She kind of had a big role to play there. Was Jesus there? Jesus was there, but he don't count because he's Jesus, so we're going to set him aside. Was Joseph there? He had better been there. He should have made a reservation, okay, called an Airbnb or something. I don't know what he's doing out here in these streets. They had to walk like 90 miles. You doing okay, right? To go to this census so that the governor could know who lived where so they could pay taxes. That's the whole reason this whole mess happened, right? And so they're walking 90 miles trying to get to Bethlehem, this city, for this census account. So this is going on. And Joseph has some questions. And Mary has some questions. But you know what their question was not? They never asked to have baby Jesus. Nobody asked for the first Christmas. It was a happy birthday that nobody had asked for. Surprise! The first Christmas. So I want to look at an account Matthew gives, and this is after Jesus is executed. He's already been dead and resurrected and all this kind of stuff. And Matthew, understanding the Old Testament and his Jewish history, and understanding the life of Jesus and everything that he did in his execution and resurrection, Matthew decides, I need to write this down. And so he writes it down, but here's why he wrote it. And you may think, oh, is the Bible in chronological order? And it is not. I know I'm ruining a bunch of stuff for you guys. But Matthew is the first gospel in the New Testament, not because it was written in that order. It's first because his intention is to talk to Jewish people about how if you're still looking for the Messiah, you just missed him. And he's giving all the facts so that you would know that Jesus was the Messiah, including what he writes in chapter 1, verse 22, and that's where we're going to pick up if you brought a Bible. If not, it's going to be on the screen. Check out what your boy said. He said, all this took place, meaning Joseph deciding not to divorce Mary, the angel appearing to him and say, hey, they're going to have a son, name him Jesus. All this took place, what the Lord had said through the prophet. Now, the prophet he's referring to is Isaiah. And here's what the prophet said about 700 years before Jesus' birthday. He said, the virgin will conceive and give birth to a son, and they will call him Emmanuel, which means God with us. So I want to give you some information about, as a student, here's what I need you to always do. When you hear any information, especially for the very first time, when you hear any information, don't just say, okay, I believe it, now what should I do with it? Oh, okay, I believe it, I can't believe that happened, now how do I need to react? Don't do that. You need to first say, is it true? I need context for that. So, for example, if I'm you and I've already debunked your nativity scene and you're going to go home and throw the wise men in the trash can, don't do that. Don't mess it up. Mom still paid a lot of money for all that, right? But you're thinking, well, Josh, we call him Jesus Christ, not Emmanuel Christ. What's going on there? It's a great question. His name, Jesus, is actually the Greek form of the name Yeshua. The English form of that name is Joshua. How about your boy, right? Proud of that, okay? I have nothing to do with the Christmas story, but just some fun facts for you. So that's his name in Greek, which means God saves. It did not say, name him Emmanuel. It said they will call him Emmanuel, which means God with us. So, how many times have you ever heard a pastor refer to Jesus as God coming to earth and dwelling among his people? If you've grown up in church, you've probably heard it a lot. It's almost like that pastor was saying God was with us. And when you read Matthew's gospel, it's almost like he's saying God was with us. When you read Luke's account, it's like he's saying God was with all these people and these disciples. When you read John's account, it's like he's saying God was with us. So students, if we're going to put on our scholarly hats, here's what we have to do. We have to get on the bus with Miss Frizzle and go on a field trip. We need to find out why in the world Matthew wrote in his New Testament document something that was referred to 700 years before the life of Jesus. So I want to know what this man had to talk about. So if we go back in time, you can go there in your books. We have an account of it, Isaiah chapter 7. But if you will, I need to give you a short history lesson. And by short, I mean I've got to condense it. So if you have questions, come up after. But in the Old Testament, we're at a time after King David and King Solomon have already died. The nation of Israel, everybody say Israel, was split, not in half, okay? It was split. There was a northern part and a southern part, okay? The southern part had a nice twang draw to their convert. I'm just kidding, but seriously, it was split. And so you had Israel at the north. They still kept their name Israel. Everybody say Israel. And down south, they had this new kingdom named Judah. Say Judah. So what was going on during this time is there was another kingdom that was trying to take over everybody, named Assyria. So they're trying to go around and start collecting like all these cities and gaining more power. So Israel and this other kingdom named Syria said, hey, if we band together and ally, we can protect ourselves from Assyria. So they're banded together and they say, hey, Judah, do you want in on this action? Do you want to partner with us? We'll be an allied group. That way we can protect ourselves from Assyria. And Judah, the king of Judah, said, no, I don't want to partner with you guys. Which led them to say, well, if you're not for us, you're against us. So how about we come down there and we take over your land and we'll divide it up and give it to someone that we know wants to be with us. In fact, we have a guy in mind. And this started being rumored around that we're going to come, you know, snatch your kids, snatch your wife, like we're going to do everything. We're going to take over. So the king of Judah was very afraid, especially when he heard that it was rumored that these armies were getting closer and closer to Judah, which then led God to speak through his prophet and say, hey, I need you to go talk to King Ahaz of Judah and tell him it's going to be okay. In fact, here's what he said in verse 7, and it'll be on the screen for you. Isaiah chapter 7, verse 7. It says, yet this is what the sovereign Lord says. This is Isaiah talking to the King Ahaz. So watch this, guys. It's not on your phone unless you Googled it. It will not take place. It will not happen. So God is showing up and saying, you're afraid for no reason. You have no reason to be afraid. They're not going to come and take over. They're not going to be able to defeat you guys. You don't have to be scared. But typically what happens whenever someone would give a prophecy, like any of us in the room would want, I need proof. I need you to prove it to me, okay? So check this out. His little part ends. He says, so it's not going to happen, and then if you do not stand firm in your faith, you will not stand at all, which we could actually just pray and take that home as a sermon right there. If you're not going to stand firm in your faith, then you're not going to stand firm at all. And just as a side message to this message, I believe that everyone in this room is full of faith. I believe that each one of you as students has a full faith in someone. I just don't know if it's Jesus or not for everybody. I think some of us absolutely are faithful to Jesus. He's my king. He's who I'm serving. I think some of us, it may be our athleticism. I'm serving that. I'm going to do whatever I can to make sure my athleticism and my career is okay. For some of us, it's our GPA. I'm going to do whatever I have to make sure my GPA is what it needs to be. For some of us, it's who we're dating. I'm going to do whatever I need to do to make sure I have that date, that person, or who you want to date. I think we all are faithful in someone. I just don't know if it's Jesus. But that's a different message for a different time. Feel free to ask me some questions after this, but let's get back to Isaiah. So Isaiah tells the king, you do not have to worry, bruh. Chill, calm down, sit down, right? All this stuff. And then, like we would always do when you have had a conversation with God, when you really wanted something, please let her say yes to a date. Please let her say yes to a date. God, give me a sign that she's the one. Like you've had those prayers, like God, give me a sign. In this instance, God says, ask me for a sign. Because if I'm going to give a prophecy, you want a sign to make sure it's going to be true. So here's what happens. Again, the Lord spoke to Ahaz, ask the Lord your God for a sign, whether in the deepest depths or in the highest heights. Translation, no cap. Like you ask me for a sign and make sure that it is so unique that you know it wasn't just a random act. So don't say, if it's true, God, then let the wind blow. Could have been a windy day. I don't know if it's still true or not. So God is saying, make sure it's unique so that you know only I could do it. Just real quick, kind of poll the crowd. How many of you are going to take God up on that offer? Absolutely. 100 times out of 100 times, like, okay, bet God, yeah, okay, just let Carolina go undefeated this season and we're good. I mean, that's all I need to know. And believe you me, I would know that it was a miracle, right? So I would just ask for, I would take him up on it. But did you know that the king of Judah spoke back to Isaiah, speaking to God? And here's what your king of Judah had to say. He said, I will not ask. And here's why. He gives an Old Testament law to talk against God and says, I will not put the Lord to the test, which is a real law. It says in the Old Testament that you should not put God to the test. But check this out, and how many times have we done this? Your boy disobeyed God and then tried to use Scripture to disobey God. It's like when you sit at the lunch table or in your lunch desk. Now, I think some of you may be back to normal-ish. But when you're sitting there eating food, and it's a good time to speak to someone else, and you know they don't like you and you don't like them, you think, well, at Squad we say love God and love people, but I don't think God was talking about them, right? So, and we try to justify like, oh, I shouldn't talk to them. No, I'm not going to associate with them. Stay away from me, cooties. And so we try to use the Bible to not do what the Bible tells us to do. Aren't we weird? We're kind of strange, right? This whole Christian, we're kind of strange. But again, another message for another day. But can we just linger on the idea that God gave an opportunity for you for him to show you a sign if you're the king of Judah? And this man says no. So now again, we got to put on our scholarly hats and say, why would he say no? He says it's because of this Bible verse to not put God to the test. But no, it's deeper than that. We got to go into our history books, okay, with Miss Frizzle, and remember, you had Assyria trying to take over everything. Israel and Syria trying to band together and kind of get some of their own land. The reason that this king didn't want to test God was because he didn't want a sign, because he had his own plan. How many of you have already laid out your plan? You already know what you want, what your desires are. You already know what you want to achieve. You've already made your Christmas list, so to speak, in your life, what you want to do. God, I don't even need you. I already know what I want. I already know what I got to do. I already know the GPA I need to get into that school. I don't need you. God, I'm going to do my thing. And so just like we tend to do, he put God out of the picture and said, I have a plan. And his plan was to partner with Assyria so that they could be allied and he wouldn't have to worry about Israel and Syria. He had his own plan. But here's the point of our message tonight as we begin to close. And it begins with God's reply through Isaiah when he said this. Then Isaiah said, hear now, you house of David, because he was a king and in the lineage of King David, which is why Matthew wrote, but we'll talk about that in a second. Now, hear this. Is it not enough to try the patience of humans? You already have some kings upset with you and trying to take over your land. Is that not enough? You're trying to try the patience of my God also? Translation, is you dumb or stupid? Like that's kind of what he's saying. It's like you've already got some people mad at you, and you probably need to lean into your faith even more so now before you get like taken over. And now you're trying to disobey God. But check this out. Despite how many times you and I have disobeyed God, God still provided a way. So listen to God's response through Isaiah. Next verse says, therefore, the Lord himself, somebody say himself, will give you a son. He said, you're not going to ask for it? Oh, that's cool. Hey, don't even worry about it. He's going to do it anyway. You didn't ask for this? Oh, that's cool. God's going to do it anyway. There's even a Bible verse later mentioned in the New Testament where Jesus is teaching how to pray. He says, oh, here's what you need to know. When you go to pray, you should know that God already knows what you need before you even ask it. So he's saying, you didn't even have to ask, King. He's going to do it anyway. But here is your son, and it should sound a little familiar. So check out the screen. It says, the virgin will conceive and give birth to a son and will call him Emmanuel. The sign that he gave this king that his promise would be fulfilled was the birth of Jesus. But I don't know if anyone knew it at that time. He said, here's what God sent me to tell you. And now, again, we got to put on our scholarly hats. Josh, are you trying to tell me I'm in high school, I am smart, my GPA actually begins with a number, not just a point? You trying to tell me that this king was given a sign for a promise from God that wouldn't even happen for another 700 years? Yeah, that's exactly what I'm saying. Because it's not about the time, it's about the promise. God still fulfilled his promise. At a time when Judah was worried about being taken over, he said, it's not going to happen. You will be in charge. In fact, there's more to the story that we would find out 300 years later. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. So now let's go back to the first Christmas. In fact, let's go 2 years after the first Christmas, when our confused wise men showed up, not at the nativity scene, but they show up and they knock on King Herod's door. Not really, they were actually at the temple, and they wanted to know, hey, where can we find the King of the Jews? And when they start asking around for the King of the Jews, it gets the attention of the King of the people. And that king, King Herod, is like, I'm the one in charge here. There shouldn't be anyone else that you're asking for. Why in the world are you seeking this person? And what you should know about the wise men, and again, we'll talk about them later. They'll be our main characters next week. But they were very smart. They had their scholarly hats on. They knew the Old Testament documents. They knew about Judaism. They studied astrology. And at one point, 2 years prior, they saw a star rising in the sky, which indicated there was new birth of the rising of a king. And then they went to their Old Testament manuscripts and said, oh, that seems to fall in line with this Messiah, this King of the Jews. And it should take place in a particular city. And I think it may have happened, even though it was written about like 700 years ago. Guys, y'all want to squat up and go on a little field trip with Miss Frizzle? That's what he told. In my mind, I think that's what he said. And he got his entourage to roll under camels, right? And they're just like rolling with, like they were just like, let's go. Hey, get the frankincense. Get it right. And so they get there. By the time they get to Jesus, Jesus is a toddler, and he's bebopping around. He's like playing in the gold and all that kind of, is this chocolate? You know? And so he's a toddler at this point. But what happened and the information that they were spreading about, hey, where's this King of the Jews, really got King Herod upset. And we're going to close with his story. So check this out in Matthew chapter 2. When King Herod heard this, he was disturbed. Ain't nobody going to take over my kingdom. How are you going to roll up and like start asking for another king? He was disturbed, but get this, all of Jerusalem was disturbed. Because they're like, oh, there's a king of the Jews. Are we going to be put back on top? Just like the Old Testament, like we're going to have this rock star guy come out with a six-pack and traps and like quads, right? Like a big guy who's going to take over, like, ha-ha, King Herod, and we're going to be back on top. Is that what's happening? When he had called together, get this, all the people's chief priests, because they came asking for the king of the Jews. So King Herod says, okay, all the chief priests, bring them to me. And the teachers of the law, anyone who's taught about Judaism, bring them to me. I want to have a conversation. And really, it wasn't a conversation. It was really just a question. And his question was this: where is the Messiah to be born? I've got these guys who are from out of town, and they look intelligent, and they talk intelligent, and they're asking for the king of the Jews. And King Herod knew enough to say, that sounds like the Messiah. So he asked these Jewish professionals, where does your Old Testament and your documents say that he's supposed to be born? Because we're in Jerusalem, where is he supposed to be born at? Because they're looking for him. And I want to see him too, so that I can kill him, because I'm the only king. Because when you have a king, you have to choose. But that's next week. But check this out. They answer him. And they say, in Bethlehem, in Judea. But wait, you didn't have your thinking cap on. Remember our field trip. Judea, that's the Greek version of the name Judah. So they essentially just told the king, oh, your rival, he was born in Bethlehem of Judea, which is about, well, it's actually just a few miles that way, in a town called Bethlehem, which was like, Fayetteville is decent, but Bethlehem was like the part you roll up the windows to drive through, like we're not stopping for anything. There's no reason to stop here. He's going to be born in Bethlehem. And here's why they knew that, because for this is what the prophet has written, and this prophet is a different prophet. This prophet that we're about to look at was Micah, and he was going around prophesying about 400 years before Jesus' birth. And here's what Micah said about Bethlehem and Judah. He said, but you, Bethlehem, in the land of Judah, are by no means least among the rulers of Judah. Now let's go back in what we talked about with King Judah. Did the king Ahaz, when he was upset and worried about being taken over, did he feel like he was on top of the world, like he was the best ruler to ever rule? Now, he was scared. He was nervous. So he's like, you're not going to be least among all the rulers of Judah, for out of you, Bethlehem, this small little city, will come a ruler. Somebody say ruler. Another name for ruler is king, right? So someone to govern over you, to lord over you. But let me describe him for you so that when you see him, you'll know him. He will be like a shepherd for my people. If we're really in a country, right, I don't want to have a shepherd as my leader, to be honest with you. I want somebody that looks like a linebacker who knows some moves, that's lived on the street for a little while, has some stuff and knows some people. That's kind of who I want. I want somebody that if we're going to war and they stand out on the battlefield, people look at him and say, I don't want any of this. Right? You can have whatever you want. But this prophet says, your ruler is going to be like a shepherd. And it doesn't sound glamorous, but let me tell you why that's so important. So, JD, I'm going to sit down if that's okay. Is that cool? The reason that that's such a big deal is I need you to think about what a shepherd does. A shepherd doesn't fall asleep at night. A shepherd stays awake. A shepherd is the one that is finding it most important to make sure that everyone under him and around him, all of his flock, are taken care of and provided for. Make sure they have enough to eat. And if anything tries to threaten them, he handles it. A shepherd is not one that's just going to walk away from his flock unless it's being taken care of by someone else that he trusts. That's a shepherd. He wants to make sure that he puts his sheep first. But every king that we've read about up until this point put themselves first. So why would God provide a king that nobody was asking for? I don't understand it. Unless we were the ones he's putting first. See, now all of a sudden that first Christmas becomes a little more clear. I know we got the funny details and all of it, and it's great to read about. But here's the best gift you've ever been given. And if I asked you, if I said like, hey, think about the best gift you've ever been given, think about it, think about it, think about it. And then if I said 1, 2, 3, say it, you would name some awesome things that probably were made by Apple and invented by Steve Jobs, right? You would say some awesome products that you got off of Amazon. And then I would say, when did you get it? And you say, oh, I got it 5 years ago. And then I would follow up and say, where is it now? And you say, I don't know, I turned it in to get a newer one. So the best gift you ever got wasn't technology. The best gift you ever got was the same gift I got, and I didn't even ask for it. But the best gift, and it'll be on the screen for you if you want to take a picture, write it down. The best gift is not that verse. But the best gift is that time that God provided what I needed before I asked for it. That's the best gift. The best gift you'll ever receive is the one you didn't ask for, but the one you really needed. The trouble is, as a teenager, let's be honest, I just don't feel like I need it right now. It's like my parents got me some shoes that I have to grow into. But what if I told you that when it comes to your faith in God, that's not how it works? You are a part of His kingdom the moment you decide and receive Him and you live in His kingdom here on this earth. You don't have to wait for anything. It's just a matter of which king will you serve. You as king or queen. I'm trying to be, spread it out. Women power, okay. Is that your king? Is it you? Is it your popularity? Is it your likability? Is that your king? Or is Jesus your king? So now with all this like spinning in the air, and you're like, oh my goodness, Josh, I just thought you were going to read us like the night before Christmas or something, but okay. I have another thing that I have to kind of tell you about Christmas. When it comes to Christmas, please don't storm the stage. There's a problem with Christmas that we have to tell you next week. Please don't miss it, and please come in your pajamas to hear it. And we'll talk about it, but let me pray for us. Hey, thank you so much for watching this message at CrossPointe Church and our youth group. If you want to receive Christ as your personal Savior, we're so excited for you making that decision, but perhaps you want to know more about what that means and, of course, what's next. So please go to the description, check out those links to find out more information, and, of course, reach out and we can schedule your baptism whenever you're ready. But thank you again for watching. Have a great rest of your week, and we love you guys.